everybody. Good afternoon. I'm so pleased we can come together today. Actually, we are kicking off National Career Development Month as we are discussing life design today, a very exciting month where we hope you will be focusing on your career goals and setting time apart in your schedule to make sure that you're on track with those. And certainly we want to come beside you and help you with that career planning and job seeking that you are, I know, so diligently seeking. The Center for Career and Professional Development is a wonderful office at Mercer University that is here to equip and empower all Mercerians to thrive in their careers. So taking action to help you Mercerians change the world, we are offering many opportunities for you to continue to learn and have conversations and collaborations about career development. Today is one of those wonderful opportunities. I've been eagerly awaiting today's event, and it is my pleasure to tell you just a little bit about our speaker, Danielle Nelson. Danielle is a medical doctor and a community psychiatrist from Kingston, Jamaica, where she is also a researcher and a mental health educator. Danielle is soon to be a Mercer Bear as she is currently enrolled in the Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health program on the Atlanta campus. So the Center for Career and Professional Development here, we've been enjoying Danielle's immense experience and expertise over the last few months as she's been serving in our department as a graduate assistant. And Danielle plans to deliver and transition to scale effective group therapy interventions in communities in Jamaica when she completes her degree and returns back home to Kingston. I know that she'll make wonderful contributions in changing the world there. And I'm also pleased to further celebrate with her about her recent selection, which was announced in the Den publication back in September, that she was selected to receive an American Association of University Women 2021-2022 International Fellowship. So we celebrate with her. We are proud of Danielle. And I just want to pause for a moment, just tell you a little bit about what has inspired our program today. You know, we've all been through various life transitions, a lot of challenges, especially in the last 20 months. And I know that at times we all face questions and ponderings about our work and purpose. I know I have, and I understand those complexities. So realizing what a valuable topic this is and how infrequently we actually take a pause to dig a little deeper and help us design a meaningful career that's aligned with the life we intend to live out. I thought this was an important topic today, and the CCPD crew here with you today, we all are very excited and honestly have found this topic very meaningful to ourselves. So this presentation today was created as a result of the conversations on our team and really just very inspired by Danielle as she's contributing to the Mercer community, which again, I can't say enough about. We are very thankful. So it is my hope today that the participants will be interactive and that this would have some meaning in your life and in your life design. So without further ado, Danielle, I'm going to turn it over to you. And I just want to say thank you in advance for this really meaningful conversation today.
Thank you very much, Kim, and thank you for your warm introduction. I have been honored to be not only a Mercer Bear, but a part of the CCPD team. It's been very enriching and fulfilling, and we're glad to just share some of what we have been talking about with you, as Kim has mentioned. So we're talking today about life design and purpose in work, and it's something that may not be, we're not familiar with. We're not, it's not something that we frequently think about. And so we want to introduce this topic to help you to start thinking differently, maybe more broadly, maybe more deeply about your career goals and objectives in a very meaningful and practical way. So part of the reason why we are thinking about this new frontier, life design in career and in work, is because there are new frontiers in the world of work. As many of us might know, those of us who are maybe a little older or you interact with persons who are baby boomers, you know that there was once upon a time orientation towards work where you got educated, whether that was high school or college. You tried to find a stable job in a specific career, and then you stayed in that particular position until you retired, that particular company. And we know now that sort of concept is really phasing out. We also recognize that more and more fewer graduates actually end up working in their field of study. And so even as we're talking about this, we want to keep it interactive. We're going to keep engaging with you as the presentation goes on. And so we're going to launch a little poll now that asks you about your current work if you have a first degree. So we want to ask, how many of us are actually currently working in the field of our first degree? For those of us who have first degrees, how many of us are currently working in the field of our first degree? So we're going to give that a little while so that everybody can get an opportunity to chime in. So we're just going to give that a little while longer, maybe another 30 seconds, to allow people to think about it and think about what may have been their first degree, and if that matches up with what you're doing now in the world of work. So maybe about 3/4 of our participants have already chimed in about their current work. All right, so we're going to go ahead and end our poll now so that we can get back to our talk. But I think this is very instructive. So from the poll we just took informally, only 13% of us are currently working in the field of our first degree. Now, we know this might be a combination of things. This might be persons who have not yet launched into the world of work. And so you are still in that pre-launch phase where you're not working in your first degree because you haven't acquired it yet. But then there's going to be a large number of us who are actually in a graduate degree or we're otherwise engaged, and we're actually not in the field that we studied for in our first degrees. And so this is very instructive of what we are even talking about today. A study by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, according to Fain in 2019, actually found that only 27% of graduates were working in their field of study. And we found in our informal poll even less than that. Only 13% of us were actually working in our original field of study. And so you can see this is where we're having market shifts in the way that we think about career, work, and education. Persons are also looking more for purpose over security. We also find that social media is revolutionizing income streams. Jobs are looking now more for skill sets rather than organizational fit. So our gig economy companies, which we will not mention any brands today, but those are perfect examples of how jobs are looking for skill sets instead of long-term organizational fit from their workers. And workers are also demanding that their jobs fit with their life. The current labor market crisis that we see now in the this latter part of the COVID-19 pandemic has also shown that persons are reluctant to go back to careers that did not fulfill their life's values, did not fit in with their family lives, or did not otherwise fit in with their lifestyle. And so into this new frontier steps in life design. So historically, just for a bit of background, the earliest vocational guidance movements were focused on testing individuals and identifying traits that matched well with existing careers. We then got into the career education movement, where it was focused on teaching individuals about the tasks that come with the various stages of career development and helping them to approach and master these tasks with mature career attitudes and competencies. The new frontier in career development, that is life design, marries career education with narrative theory and design thinking to create a way of thinking about career that is flexive and iterative. So when we say iterative, what we mean is thinking about career as multiple tests and reflections rather than a one-time decision and conclusion. Life design is a person-centered approach, so it's all about you. And it invites all of us to be change makers. It also allows us the freedom to think about ourselves and the world of work in a very liberated way. Just want to say from now that a lot of our presentation will be informed by work from the Tulane University Life Design Center, and a lot of the writings will be from Lang. So when we talk about design thinking, you're probably like, what is she talking about? So design thinking is a concept that reaches over a large number of disciplines: engineering, marketing, in psychology, and it really has several stages. So you empathize with your users. What is it that they need? What is it that they desire? What are the problems that they're having that you are trying to solve? You then define these problems. You ideate or think about them in just very revolutionary and different ways. You start to prototype experiments from what you have thought about and the solutions that you're conceptualizing. And then you come up with experiments or tests in order to see if what you are coming up with as this new way of thinking actually will work. And then you repeat the cycle. And so that then blends with narrative theory in the life design framework of thinking about your career. We're going to get very practical, so don't worry if this seems theoretical right now. When we talk about narrative in life design, what we're talking about is the fact that all of us have a story that we're continually reconstructing. So I want each of us to think right now about a story that's really meaningful in our life, something that's happened to us that we will always remember. We tell this story often. I want you to think about that story for a second. While you're thinking about that story, I want you to also think about the number of times you have retold that story to yourself and to others. While you're thinking about the number of times you've retold the story, I want you to start to think about how the story has changed a bit. As you have retold the story, how you have shifted the focus, how you have gathered different meanings, how you highlight the parts that are funnier to you or more powerful, and how the other elements sort of slide into the background. That's natural. We all do that when we tell stories. And what we do when we're telling stories and retelling them is that we're actually constructing and reconstructing ourselves. We're gaining deeper meaning from the way we tell stories, and that deeper meaning is actually changing us. And so life design really embraces that concept. The fact that we all have a narrative that we're continually reconstructing, that our story is a tool through which our personalized career path is built, and that meaningful activities prompt making of the self, shaping of the identity, and construction of career. So when we're starting to think about life design and narrative specifically, some of the questions we start to ask ourselves are, what are some job or vocation or career experiences that I recall that were particularly meaningful to me? From as early as running a neighborhood lemonade stand to as elaborate as an internship at a high-powered investment firm or volunteering for Habitats for Humanity, what were some of the significant moments for you? And who were some of the significant figures? Narrative in life design leans on the idea that the more stories that you tell, the more you develop your identity and hence your career. And that is something that we can also assist you with in the Center for Career and Professional Development if you find that you're a little stuck about how your stories apply to your career path. So when we think about the steps to life design, we're going to be starting with the radical acceptance of the present, defining what holds value for us, brainstorming options, creating experiments to test ideas, designing our brand and narrative, ensuring that we engender flexibility and believe that we are worth the change. So when we talk about radical acceptance of the present, the more that we're able to accept where we are now is the more we are able to become aware. And the greater our awareness is the more we are able to accept where we are. The truth is that we can't change something that we're not aware of. And when we are unable to accept and meet with compassion where we are, we're unable to really take a fulsome view of our lives to be able to say, where am I going next? So we want to ensure that we're clearly recognizing where we are in terms of feeling and thought, where we are presently in our social lives and our financial lives, and just being in that present moment and regarding it with compassion. So for some people, let's be honest, that might look like, I have reached the end of this doctoral program and I realize that I don't want to be in academia after all. And that's okay. I accept that, and I have compassion for myself in this. It also involves being honest about the realities of oppression in your current context without feeling that you are defined by them. For example, a lack of access to traditional training opportunities in some socioeconomic brackets. And as we said, we can't change what we're not aware of. After we've started to explore this heightened level of awareness of where we are, we then want to start defining what really matters to us. Now, the truth is that all of us, if we're really able to stop and think about it, inherit a lot of what's important from others, from our family, from what we have experienced in life. And whereas a lot of that really defines who we are, some of it we don't necessarily want to keep. We've just never stopped long enough to think, is this useful for me? Does this have any utility? And so we want to start selecting what we keep and redefining that we don't really want to keep. So questions that we might want to ask ourselves include, what was I taught about the meaning of work? Is the purpose of work to gain money? Was I taught that work is not supposed to be enjoyable? Was I taught that any discomfort in a job is my cue to exit? So that is part of what we want to start doing when we're thinking about what really matters to me and how does that connect to the way that I work. Now, of course, we want to be sensitive to our various cultural backgrounds, and we understand that for some people, this sort of individualistic sort of thinking is not true to us. It's foreign because we're from collectivist families, cultures, where everything ties back to the needs of the family and the community, and that is awesome. And life designing still fits into that. Some of the questions that we can ask from that context might be, what do I add to the community? And what parts of my culture do I accept and what parts do I want to revise? Another part of this exploration of the self that really helps a lot of people is writing down your story. So business leader and motivational and leadership coach Doug Conant, in his talk with Brene Brown, who we all know from the Dare to Lead podcast, shared about a time in his life where he was suddenly without work at the age of 32, having really been having the chair, kind of pulled from under him with this sudden job loss. And he was encouraged by a mentor to sit down and write his story. He said that he was shocked at how much he learned about himself. And he encouraged the listeners to inhabit their story and bring all of themselves to it without fear. And as we've been alluding to, it's hard to have the courage of your convictions if you don't know what they are. The other thing that we want to address when we're thinking about life designing, something that makes all of us a little nervous in the room, is this idea of passion. Everybody's always saying, follow your passion, follow your passion. But the truth is, you don't have to have a passion. A quote by Elizabeth Gilbert from this article by Lang, is quoted as saying, we live in a world that has come to fetishize passion. If someone says, follow your passion, they have harmed you. It makes you feel more excluded or like a failure. Curiosity is a milder, quieter, more welcoming, and more democratic entity than passion. Curiosity is our friend, and it teaches us how to become ourselves. So for those of us, I, for example, have always thought of myself as a jack of all trades and a master of none. I had a brother who he had a singular passion. He was a graphic designer, he was an illustrator, he was an animator, and that's what he was going to do. From he was 6 years old, he always had a drawing book in his hand. And in some ways I envied him because he was not going to be swayed or shifted by everything that seemed interesting to him. He was going to stick to the task that he knew he was going to achieve. And that's exactly what he's doing now. He's a graphic designer and illustrator. But at the same time, we learn over time as we become more accepting of ourselves that all of these things that we're interested in are part of our unique tapestry. It's a part of what makes us unique. And it's pulling those things together that is going to help us to really live out what we have been brought to the earth to do. So when you're thinking about life designing, instead of trying to find your passion, think more about interests, values, background, the social justice issues that keep you up at night. You're like, this is not right, and I have to do something about it. Your beliefs, your skills. Think about what really matters to you, whether it may seem really small or really big. And this leads us into brainstorming. So when we start to brainstorm, we really in life design want to think way out of the box. And we're going to have some activities later to help to start to spark that sort of way out of the box imagination. Take the limits off of how you're thinking. So a story from Dam and Siang, we're talking about design thinking and life design, helps us to kind of understand what we mean by that. So a large truck attempted to go under a bridge and got stuck, creating a traffic jam for miles and drawing emergency personnel from all departments. The engineers, truck driver, firefighters, police, and other first responders brainstormed at length to try and figure out how to get the truck out. They postulated on how to dismantle the truck or how to break the bridge while causing as little damage as possible. Finally, a small boy walked past and simply said, "Why don't you just let the air out of the tires?" So a simple suggestion from a small boy helps us to understand what we mean when we talk about thinking outside the box. This story demonstrates how we get stuck by our patterns of thinking and our problem focus. We're invited in life designing to look at things from all angles, to examine deeply, so as to allow ourselves the opportunity to shift away from problem-focused mindsets and focusing on the limitations of what is tangible currently. So we have here an example of somebody brainstorming, not about what things seem to neatly fit together, but what do I love? Every sort of thing about what they love, and then trying to see if there are natural connections, and even if they don't seem to be immediate natural connections, things will come along as we start to test and experiment. Now, of course, we can't talk about brainstorming without talking about a four-letter F word called fear. Fear often limits us from being able to truly think outside of the box. And sometimes these fears are not illegitimate. They're based on real experiences we've had, real things we've had to recover from and overcome, and real limitations that we're experiencing now in our current lives. So how do we overcome this fear? We first remind ourselves that we're thinking iteratively. So life is not about making one big decision, but several small decisions towards becoming our most authentic self. We also want to remind ourselves that each decision is not the end of the world, and that exploration is giving us the freedom to become our more authentic selves. That's what we're doing in each decision, where we are honoring ourselves and being true to what we really want. And as we talk about decisions, I just want to encourage all of us, when we have time, to watch this TED Talk by Ruth Chang on how to make hard choices. So I'll give us a minute to write that down in case there are persons who would like to explore that later on. It really is a powerful and poignant talk about how we can approach a process of decision making with less fear and less guilt and shame. Now we're going to come back to this a little later when we get more interactive, but we're mentioning it now because we're talking about brainstorming. And this is a concept from Lang at Tulane University on how to brainstorm. That is fearless mission statements. So in your fearless mission statements, you would be coming up with three basic statements. One is the top of mind. That is, if you continue down the path you're currently going, what's likely to happen. So you continue in the current degree you're doing, what's the career you're likely to jump into. The next is your pivot sketch. So if robots took over your current job path, or that option otherwise disappeared, This is the likely pivot that you would make. And then there's a constraint free. If money and image didn't matter and you knew you'd be loved and supported no matter what would you do? So as I said, we're going to come back to this a little later. Now, having brainstormed and ideated and thought of lots of options, we want to start moving towards testing and creating experiments in our new ideas. And part of that includes networking. Now, everybody's probably thinking, oh, networking. We're always talking about networking. But networking really can be very enriching and powerful if we approach it with a different mindset. So first of all, we sometimes think very limitedly about networking. We often don't recognize that everyone you already know is a part of your network. We do know that there are honest limitations, that there are some, higher societal issues that keep certain planes and career fields often closed to a certain subset of people. But that doesn't mean that you will not be able to design your life and go into the field that you really would want to be in. And sometimes it just takes starting where you are and making connections where you already exist in your own ecology. The truth is, you don't know what you don't know. And so sometimes having a conversation with people you're already connected to can create something beautiful and meaningful that you could not have imagined. And so you want to approach networking with curiosity and with boldness. So if you see someone working in a position you might be interested in, be bold, reach out and find out if you can have a 20-minute informational interview. And so right now, before we go any further, I want to ask, what spaces do you have connections in right now? So remember, we're thinking like life designers, we're thinking outside the box. So we're going to ask persons to put in the chat, what are some spaces that you have connections right now? Anything that comes to mind. All right, so Mercer alumni, I'm loving it. Everybody's seeing how part of Mercer is part of our brand and it's part of where we're able to make connections. Professional associations, energy trading, friends, I love that, and co-workers of your family, exactly. Past employers, exactly, persons from your church, career colleagues across states, persons you've met in professional organizations, your neighbors, anything else, anywhere else that comes to mind. Your peers in school, I'm loving that. Staff members, exactly. So maybe persons who you work alongside now. Meeting mentors. Exactly. So there are many places that we could be. Oh, I love this. Friends of my parents. Parents of the parent friends of your child. I love that. Right. So we're starting to think outside of the box. Where are some of the places that we might be able to make connections? So even persons like competitors, suppliers, customers, business partners, former connections, as we said, from previous jobs. We've mentioned religious leaders, community leaders. I love that. Somebody's mentioning Handshake. That's our one-stop shop for career and professional development here at Mercer. So there are many places that we can make connections. One thing that maybe we haven't heard yet is affinity groups. So those of us who cycle, we run, we are in a dance club, anything that we might do in our casual life or in our personal life may actually be somewhere we can make a connection as well. So as we're talking, I would love if we could start making notes as well and start thinking, where are some untapped connections that I really want to get into, to explore and to grow more in myself and in my career journey. So thank you for that. We're loving the participation. And having identified these different spaces, we then want to approach them with empathy. So we talked about empathy already in our life design framework. And so we're rebranding our informational interviews as empathy interviews. So in these empathy interviews, they're 20-minute conversations where you're trying to build understanding and not create a lead. So this is what makes it a little different from traditional networking when we're thinking, oh, I want to make an impact. I want this person to remember me. And you do want them to remember you, but it's more about the exploration of them and how it helps you to explore yourself. So you're avoiding thinking how I can milk this connection and more thinking, how can I learn about this person and myself in this conversation today? How can I add value to their life? And you want to make these interviews all about them. So you're not there to sell your product, sell yourself, but you're actually there to explore and learn more about them because you are in your own exploration process. You can ask questions like, what is your day-to-day work like? Who were the most influential adults in your life as a young person? How did your interests develop? What other things were you involved in outside of academic pursuits? What do you think that you're good at? And how do you entwine that into your work? And one of the important elements of empathy interviews is that we want to ensure we take the time to reflect. Oftentimes, we're so busy going from one activity to the other mindlessly that we don't stop to really harness the meaning out of the experience we just had. And so you want to ensure that after you've had one of your empathy interviews, you stop to take notes to find out what you really learned about this person and what did you learn about yourself and this journey that you're on. So as you are now designing tests and experiments, as we talked about in our design thinking framework, we're also going to be designing our brand. So your elevator pitch, which is your 90-second introduction of yourself that helps to draw people in. And for those of us who have never heard of an elevator pitch before, please feel free to check out our additional resources on career.mercer.edu for more information. You want to think about designing your LinkedIn and handshake pages and really making it speak uniquely to who you are and who you're discovering yourself to be, as well as bringing together your professional experience and all of the other things that you would normally put in your LinkedIn. Electronic portfolios, business cards, all of these are going to be part of designing your brand. And part of designing your brand also includes Googling yourself to see what comes up when you put your name into the World Wide Web. So having come up with these ideas that you're going to test, you then launch your experiments. So this is a fun picture that our chemistry department here at Mercer jumped in when we were getting hyped for Handshake, and they experimented with their future and got hyped for Handshake. So we really thank them. It was a lot of fun. But when we talk about testing our ideas, you may have very small experiments, and then you might have very large ones. So a larger experiment might be to audit a class for a semester in something that you are completely unskilled in or have no experience in or is outside of your degree. A smaller thing might be doing a micro internship in an area you're interested in, meaning lasting a few weeks. You might even do something simply like reading a book in the field or watching a Netflix documentary. And you want to try to ensure you're doing multiple experiments. You want to try and have an experiment mindset, that you're always looking for opportunities to explore more this area that you're trying to test. And you want to ensure that you're not thrown off by one bad experience. And when we're talking about bad experiences, good experiences, we have to mention a little bit about happenstance theory. So happenstance theory is something we talk about in career development, and it really talks about the chance opportunities that really turn into something incredible and meaningful. So I want to ask, even now, has anybody ever had a chance opportunity completely change their path? We want to just put it in the chat. Have you ever had a chance opportunity change your path? Yes or no? Has there ever been a time that something that you were like, what are the odds? What happened? What just happened? And it completely changed your trajectory. Wow, we have some resounding yeses in the room, that there have been times where something that you felt totally random actually ended up causing a pivot in your life. And so that's what we talk about when we're thinking about happenstance theory. The fact that these chance opportunities that change our paths are part of our meaning and part of our narrative or story. So we want to ensure that as we're experimenting, we remain open to unexpected shifts. You create a plan, but you welcome detours. And you always want to be asking yourself, what did I learn from the failed experiments, the ones that feel like failures? Because nothing is wasted unless you don't learn something. So what do we mean by that? Even the informational or empathy interviews that don't go well because you're like, this person is a jerk. What is it that you can learn from that experience that can inform you for going forward? And if there's anybody who would love to or feels particularly led that they would love to share a story of their own happenstance, you can go ahead and unmute if there's anybody who feels really led, like, this speaks to me because I know exactly what this is about. All right. I see Inez has raised her hand. You can go ahead and unmute your mic and just share your story with us.
Hi, hello. So I have kind of a funny one actually about this. For years, since I was like 3, I wanted to be a lawyer, like for a long time now. That was like a career path. This is what I was gonna do. It was gonna be cool. And in 7th grade, no one wanted to go on this one field trip. It was for free. I just saw an opportunity to get out of class. I was like, let's do this. And I went to like a local prison to see like the judicial process and the whole thing. I learned that I hated paperwork, did not like the rooms. I just did not want to do that at all. And it was such a wonderful eye-opening experience.
Right. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Inez. So Inez is talking about the fact that she sees the opportunity. I love that in that story. That's the biggest part, that she saw an opportunity. Nobody else was interested. And she's like, I'm going. And she went and was able to learn something incredible about herself. And it shifted her path completely. She did a complete 180 or 90 and went in a different direction. Thank you very much for sharing that. And so we want to ensure that we are open, as she said, to these unexpected shifts, because she could have decided she's just going to plug through and keep going for the lawyer, but she realized that's not really what she wanted to do. Thank you again for sharing. And so while we're life designing, the whole idea is that we want to embrace our unique journeys. So your career story is a journey, not a destination. And we want to invite us to really think about our lives in this more compassionate and open way, because not only will it help us to lean towards purpose, but it will also allow us to find joy in the day-to-day, because we are appreciating every experience as an opportunity to live. All right, so we're actually going to start our activities now. So this is where we're going to get really interactive. We're going to be forming groups of 4 or 5, and Cindy is going to assist me with that. And I'm going to show you some prompts, and then you're going to take some time to think about the prompts, discuss with persons, and then we'll come back after that. So some of the prompts are, my biggest open questions when thinking about my future are: I'm currently focused on trying to. I'm interested in spending more time on and or learning more about. I also have some doubts about. In this new reality, I'm working on mourning and letting go of. What is not working for me right now is new life changes that are beneficial are, and while there is a lot outside of my control, I do have the ability to change. What? We also are going to come back to our fearless mission statements after this. So we're going to ask persons to hold on as well. But we are going to go into our breakout rooms now, and we will share the questions in the chats. So everybody's coming back from their rooms. Welcome back, everyone. I hope it was a meaningful experience. We're going to have opportunities on our socials later in this week and next week to interact and talk about if we've gotten meaning out of these experiences. So thank you very much for really engaging this, really wanting to talk about practically what does this mean? What does it really mean to life design? So we appreciate all of you. If at the end, there's anybody who wants to share specifically about this activity, we will open the floor for that. But we're going to move to our next activity now, which is what we mentioned earlier, brainstorming fearless mission statements. So, okay, I see we had a great breakout room. Awesome. So we had talked about this earlier in the presentation. The top of mind, so everybody's going to do this now. If you continue down the path you're currently going on, what's your likely path? Your pivot sketch. If robots took over the path that you're aiming for currently, or for some reason that option otherwise disappeared, what is the pivot you would likely make? And then the constraint-free. If money and image didn't matter and you knew you'd be loved and supported no matter what would you do? So we're going to give everybody just about 3 minutes to contemplate those things. And then we're going to bring it on home. All right. So thank you for that, everyone. I'm loving it. I'm seeing lots of creatives in the audience, lots of artists. Loving that. And so what we're doing by doing this activity is, so I'm going to share my experience. We did this amongst the team, as we've been talking about. So this is not a new conversation to us. These are conversations we're having within ourselves. And doing this activity for me actually helped me to start. So like a lot of you, artists at the end, you know, more in the acting, dancing, singing realm, in that constraint-free plane. And what it helped me to do is to actually start bringing some of those things more into my current reality. It helped me to start thinking about them again and saying, you know, I really love these things and I think I can find meaning and purpose in them. And so it's actually started bringing it back now into what I'm already doing, even though that is maybe very different, it seems, than my top of mind or my pivot sketch. And so I'm actually experimenting now with bringing those realities into the present now. So I'm loving these. Try to take over the world. Pinky and the brain. For those of us who are old enough to know. So love it. Thank you very much, guys. Ooh, a florist. Love it. All right. So we really want to start thinking about these things. I want to invite you that after today's presentation, don't just put these down and dismiss it. Don't just write it in a book that you never look at. Write it somewhere you can see it so you can come back to it in the days to come and start thinking to yourself, how can I start to bring these more into my present? So as we start to bring them into the present, I want to challenge each of us to design an experiment. So that's your homework for today's session. Is today, after we close the meeting, I want you to design an experiment around these things that you have pondered. And we also want to make a plug for Focus 2. Focus 2 helps you to learn about yourself and see how various fields of interest fit you and your lifestyle. We have many amazing self-assessment resources on this online platform that include not just skills assessments, as we've been talking about in the career education movement and vocational skills assessment, but also things like values, leisure interests, personality. And these things can help you to see where you might be able to go and explore in your career exploration. So Stephanie has posted in the chat so that you can learn more about Focus 2 at career.mercer.edu.